Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking the movie Kubo and the Two Strings. Um, this was a movie that I just happened to catch the trailer of it somewhere randomly months ago and was really immediately very intrigued by it just because it was a very interesting visually looking movie, and it's also a movie that features a kind of a Japanese setting. Not the real world Japan, of course, but uh, sort of a fairy tale world inspired by Japan. Now, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you know that I used to live in Japan. I spent almost the better part of 3 years living there. So, of course, Japan is a place that is very dear to my heart. I even broke out one of my old T-shirts from my time living there. Picked this up was given this in Kariya City, which is near Nagoya, from when I visited the Aichi University of Education many years ago. So, we're going to do this like we always do with my movie reviews. I'm going to talk about the movie in general, and then we're just going to kind of do a little bit of spoiler stuff at the end. So, first things first, I really liked this movie quite a lot. Visually, this was made by this. It really looks great. It's made by the same folks who did Coraline and Corpse Bride. So, and they do stop motion animation. So, very little of what you see in this movie is computer generated. In fact, remember reading that it's basically just some water effects that they did are computer generated. Everything else is like genuine stop motion animation, which is not something you really see a lot of these days. And as I said, the setting is sort of a very fairy tale version of Japan in olden times. And a great deal of attention is really paid, particularly to the costumes. I love the clothes that you see people in the village wears, their kimonos and such, and the way the town is laid out, and the way people interact with each other. It reminds me of what I know of Japan in those olden times before westernization was a thing. And while strictness and discipline have always had an important place in Japanese culture, a lot of people tend to not realize that in olden times there was a lot of very colorful freewheelingness in Japanese society. And again, it was always it's this really fascinating mix of strictness and discipline, and liveliness and freewheelingness, which of course is still present in Japan today if you know what to look at. But though, in my personal opinion, the freewheelingness has taken a bit of a dive. But again, that's just kind of my personal impression. Doubtlessly, others would argue against that, and we're not really here to debate the ins and outs of modern Japanese society. But that the flavor and the look and so much of it of the spirit of of Japanese things are in this movie, present in this movie, and it really has a very nice feel to it, particularly if you're reasonably well versed in Japanese culture. Um, like one of my favorite examples is the character of Beetle, who talks about how he's a samurai and all this stuff, and he's reasonably good with a sword, but his real skill lies mostly with archery. And if you understand a little bit about the history of samurai, they actually really got their start primarily as horse archers. For a long time, it was really considered you weren't considered a proper samurai if you didn't seriously know your way around a bow. Now, of course, things changed over time, and the katana took on a more prominent role in things. But again, that's such a nice little detail. And of course, the Lantern Festival that plays an important role in the storyline. And I don't consider this a spoiler. That's a very common thing that you see not just in Japan but in other Asian cultures, everywhere like South Korea, Thailand, things like that. Again, very very properly common. And of course, one of the main components of this movie is Kubo's instrument, which is a shamisen. and I'm gonna try not to lapse too heavily into Japanese pronunciation of stuff. I've always found it to be a little pretentious when people invoke foreign words and make it a point to sort of pronounce them um, the way it would sound in the native language. Like here in English, for example, we say karate. In Japanese, we more like karate. So when people say that, it always sounds kind of pretentious to me. So I'm going to try and avoid that, but I may slip. So do forgive. So yeah, the instrument that plays a very prominent role in this movie is, of course, the shamisen, and it does really demonstrate what I've known for a while, that if you put an instrument like that in the hands of somebody who really knows what they're doing, the shamisen is an amazing musical instrument. Um, and the music in this movie is great. I mean, a lot of it, there is a lot of very nice, traditionally Japanese inspired music, and then they kind of mix it in with "My Guitar Weeps" by I believe it's George Harrison. That's actually like the ending music for the movie, and yet it works so well. I mean, this is a very nice fusion of Eastern ideas and Western and movie making. It's very similar, I think, in terms of spirit to Kung Fu Panda. And I mean, I've never been a big Jack Black guy. I'm not really a huge fan of his, but even I had to admit that he was fantastic in Kung Fu Panda. And Kung Fu Panda is a really great movie. I mean, it really takes a lot of the elements from the culture, from Chinese culture, mixes them in, tells a really good story that's extremely respectful of the culture and really showcases it in a beautiful way. And Kubo does the same thing with Japanese culture. And again, if you know this, you can really just know the little details of things, and just little things jump out at you. Like I mentioned with the samurai and the horse archers, the lantern festivals. You can see the yin yang symbols on the sisters' armor. Uh, the hats that they wore, although oddly enough, actually, I think those are what I would, to the best of my knowledge, are really a little bit more traditionally Korean style hats, but I could be mistaken. My knowledge of the history of Japanese hats is not very good. And just even down to the little details, like the pipes that you see them smoking, are, again, very traditional Asian style pipe. So the attention to detail in this movie is really, really uh, very delightful. Um, and the story itself is a pretty simple story, but then again, this is basically a fairy tale. And fairy tales at their heart are usually very simple stories. Now, there's one or two little twists here, but some of which were pretty predictable, and there were one or two was like, okay, I didn't quite expect that, but it makes sense. So it's a nice mix. There are, like I said, for the most part, the story is kind of predictable, but they do throw a curveball at you here and there that kind of keeps things interesting, which I did appreciate. Um, Characterization. Well, everybody here has their moments. Kubo has his moments where he's sullen and angry, but for the most part, he's a good kid who's really copes as well as one could under really extraordinary circumstances. There's stuff that's very interesting that's going on with Kubo's mother. I mean, she's really, in a lot of ways, one of the most interesting characters in the movie. The character of Beetle. He's, for the most part, he spends most of the movie as kind of a comic relief character, but he has some really great moments where he shows really wonderful emotional understanding of other people, and where he steps up his game and really comes through and seems very heroic. And the way the movie is ultimately resolved, it's I mean, it's such a nice twist. I really loved what how they ultimately resolve things. It's I mean, it's a very in terms of both emotion and storytelling, I found the ending to be very, very satisfying. Um, let's see, what else? What else? What else? Yeah, actually, I think that kind of covers the things that I really most wanted to say. This is a really great example of all ages entertainment, which in some quarters really gets a bad reputation, which I've never quite understood. I mean, one of my all-time favorite examples of this is Harry Potter. I mean, Harry Potter is something that is very enjoyable, of course, for children, but it's done in such a way that adults can enjoy it just as much, particularly if they're willing to sort of harken back to their younger days, to their childhood. And if you're willing to go along on this fairy tale ride and enjoy it for what it is, it's a really, really enjoyable ride. Oh, right, I remember I wanted to talk about the actors in the movie. Um, so yeah, I mean, we have a really, really great cast in this movie. I'm not familiar with the kid who does the voice of Kubo, so I can't really say too much about him, other than the fact that he does a really great job as Kubo. We got Charlize Theron as Kubo's mom, and Charlize Theron. I mean, she's really, really cool. I love her a lot. She's a really cool actress, and she does some great stuff in this movie. Um, Matthew McConaughey, of all people, plays Beetle, and this is really not the kind of role I would expect from Matthew McConaughey. He's not really a guy that leaps to my mind when it comes to comedy and stuff, but he really does great in this role. I enjoyed Beetle a lot, and you can tell he was really, really having some fun with this. We also get George Takei. I mean, he's not a big role deal in the movie, but it's very, very clearly that George Takei when you're listening. I mean, he even gets to slip in an "Oh my," which is just great. And then, of course, you got Ralph Fiennes as the Moon King. Dude, Voldemort. Voldemort, man. And he does great. I mean, when you really get the Moon King up, really gets ahead of steam and starts going, it's great. Um, it's I'll have to say that for the spoiler part of the movie, but yeah. Um, no, I guess there are some people out there who are probably going to say like, well, hey, they should have gotten more Asian or Japanese actors to be in this movie, and well, definitely we've got some serious minority representations in Hollywood, particularly for Asian actors. I kind of have to kind of bring back Kung Fu Panda in this. I mean, is anybody out there really gonna say that Jack Black and Angelina Jolie did a bad job in those movies? No. And while the whole issue of representation is a tricky one, at the end of the day, I really think that it really has to be more about who's a good actor. And not that there aren't many great Asian actors out in Hollywood, but I mean, I can't think of a single word to say against anybody's performance in this movie. And just to kind of bring things back around a little bit, there's this great saying from Will Smith, and he said, "Hollywood isn't black or white; it's green." So, racial politics at the side, at the end of the day, what's really going to be influenced these things is whether or not the studios think people are going to pay money to come and see these actors in these roles. And personally, I've never been a big believer in the idea that you have to have famous people voicing characters in movies like this for it to be a big deal. But the fans of those actors coming to see them in a new role is not something that can be completely discounted either. So, in my mind, what really needs to happen is that Hollywood needs to kind of get off its butt and start cultivating those Asian actors and actresses that people will pay money to see, that studios will cast and consider as leading men and women. And it took them a long time to get around to doing that with black actors, and we've still got loads of problems with getting representation for black actors in Hollywood. Now, granted, things are getting better, in my opinion, but obviously there is a long, long way to go. But we're here to talk about a movie, not sit around and debate sociology. So, with that said, I'm going to give you your 5 warning for talking about spoilers. So, let's go. Okay. So the main twist I think probably is going to get a lot of people is that Monkey turns out to be Kubo's mom in a new form. It took me a while to kind of pick up on this, but I really did like that twist. And I like how Monkey is initially very harsh with Kubo, and doesn't really show him the sort of affection that you would think his mother would. But it makes perfect sense. She kind of goes into it like, I can't stay in this form forever, and basically I don't want to cause him to feel like he's lost me all over again. Never mind the fact that Kubo is in hot water, and gentleness is not going to get the job done. He needs a kick in the butt, and he needs to toughen up fast. And hard though it may be, that's what his mom is trying to do. Now, again, Beetle turning out to be his dad. I kind of saw this very quickly on after we got introduced to Beetle, because having his dad be an off-screen character, okay, that's workable. But if it turns out that Beetle is his dad, then that really is a nice twist. And then it only serves to really underlie the tragedy of them both being killed by Kubo's aunt towards the end of the movie. Kubo is finally actually reunited with his parents, albeit one of them is a monkey and the other one is a giant samurai beetle. But they're together again. His family is actually whole, and it lasts for about all of one meal before it's destroyed by another member of his family. But at the end of the story, Kubo is grateful. He got to spend time with his father. He got to see his mother again after he thought he'd lost her. He got to have one real meal with his parents as a proper family, or at least as close as he ever could. And he doesn't defeat the Moon King by running him through with a sword. He uses the power of music, uniting the three strings of himself, his mother, and his father into a power that turns the Moon King human and opens the door for him to possibly be redeemed. Kubo wins with the power of love and finds a new family member for himself. Now he at least has his grandfather, and he has a chance to have someone from his family there who can love him, and that he can love in return, and show a better way, taking the example of his parents about the power of love to change people, to redeem them, to make them better. And the two strings and the three strings coming together at the end, that's so beautiful. And I mean, it really is a great example of life. I mean, we are all a combination of our parents, at least in terms of our DNA, and yet we are unique. Each of us is a song that will be sung only once. And though echoes of that may live on after we are gone, it is only during this finite lifetime that song can be heard, enjoyed, and truly and properly appreciated. We are all a song that is sung only once. And yet, even when we're gone, like the movie says, the memory of us and those that we care about can live on, and that is magic. That is immortality. If you think about it, the fact that we exist makes each and every one of us a living monument to every single one of our ancestors. Every single person that could ever have called themselves a Homo sapien whose life contributed to my existence, that allows me to be here. All the millions of years of evolution that made something as simple and yet extraordinary as the human hand are embodied by me, by you, by every single one of us. Every one of us is a testament, a monument to everything and everyone that has come before us. And if I can steal a line from Gladiator, what we do in life echoes in eternity. What you and I and everyone else in the world does in our lifetime will reverberate throughout the rest of human existence. Maybe not in ways that people in the future will know or that we will live to see, but those changes, those echoes of the notes of our lives, of our song, will go on so long as there are humans in this galaxy. Music is a powerful thing, and life powerful, even more powerful. So, I think that's going to be a good place to wrap this up. Kubo and the Two Strings is heartily recommended, folks. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and you can also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.